The loneliness hit Emily Carter on a Friday night when the city was wide awake and she felt completely invisible. Outside her apartment in Portland, traffic rolled by, lights blinking, people heading somewhere meaningful. Inside, the silence felt loud enough to press against her chest. She stood by the window with her phone in her hand, scrolling without reading, waiting for a message that never came. That was when she realized the hardest truth of all. No one was coming, and no one even knew she was waiting. Emily was 32, responsible and tired in a quiet way she never talked about. Her life looked fine from the outside. She worked at a publishing house, paid her bills on time, and smiled when people asked how she was doing. But the days had begun to blur together. Her last relationship had ended months ago, not with shouting or betrayal, but with silence and distance. It hurt in a softer way, the kind that stays longer. Since then, evenings felt endless. Nights stretched wide, and she often went to bed feeling like she had disappeared a little more each day. That night, the feeling was heavier than usual. She could have stayed home, turned on the TV, and let the hours pass. Instead, she grabbed her coat, almost changed her mind, then opened the door anyway. The air outside was cold and damp, the kind that made you walk faster. She headed toward a small cafe a few blocks away, a place she had passed many times but rarely entered. Something about the warm lights in the window pulled her in. The cafe smelled like coffee and rain-soaked jackets. Soft music played in the background. People sat in pairs or small groups, talking low, laughing gently. Emily ordered tea and looked for a place to sit. Most tables were full, but she found a small one near the window. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and stared outside, watching reflections ripple across the wet street. She felt alone but not completely shut off. That felt new. Across the room, two men sat at a corner table. They had been talking easily, the kind of conversation that didn't need effort. Daniel Wright noticed Emily first. He was the quieter one, tall, calm, with thoughtful eyes. He saw how she sat slightly hunched, how she kept checking her phone, how she looked like someone trying not to feel disappointed. Lucas Monroe noticed next. He was more open, more expressive, with an easy smile that made people relax. He leaned toward Daniel and said something quietly. Daniel hesitated. He didn't like interrupting strangers. But something about Emily felt familiar, like a feeling he recognized in himself from another time. After a moment, he stood up and walked over. "Sorry to bother you," Daniel said kindly. "We're debating something important. Do you think this place actually makes good tea? Or are we just imagining it?" Emily looked up, surprised. For a second, she didn't know what to say. Then she smiled, a small, real smile that surprised even her. "I think it's good," she said. "But maybe it just tastes better when you're tired." Daniel laughed. That might be the answer. Lucas joined them, pulling over a chair. "I'm Lucas," he said. "We promise we're harmless." Emily introduced herself, feeling a little shy but strangely comfortable. The conversation flowed easily after that. They talked about the weather, the city, and how Portland felt different at night. Daniel listened closely, asking thoughtful questions. Lucas joked and teased lightly, keeping the mood warm. Emily found herself talking more than she usually did, laughing without forcing it. Time moved faster than she expected. She talked about her job, about books she loved, about how she used to enjoy evenings more. Daniel shared that he had moved from Seattle after a long marriage ended quietly. Lucas talked about leaving Toronto to start over somewhere that felt less crowded, more human. None of it felt heavy. It felt honest. Emily noticed something important. They weren't trying to impress her. They weren't pushing for anything. They were simply present. That alone felt rare. When the cafe announced it was closing, Emily felt a small drop in her stomach. She hadn't realized how much she didn't want the night to end. They stepped outside together, the air cool and fresh. The streetlights reflected off the pavement, turning the road into a mirror of gold and white. For a moment, no one spoke. Goodbyes can be awkward when something meaningful has started without warning. "We come here most Fridays," Lucas said casually. "Same time?" Daniel nodded. "If you ever want to join us again?" There was no pressure in his voice. Just an invitation. I'd like that, Emily said, surprising herself with how quickly the answer came. They exchanged brief smiles, then walked in opposite directions. Emily stood for a moment, watching them disappear down the street. She felt lighter than she had when she left her apartment. The loneliness hadn't vanished, but it had softened. It felt shared now, understood. As she walked home, Emily realized something else. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't replaying the past or worrying about the future. She was thinking about a conversation, a laugh, a moment of being noticed. She didn't know what this meant or where it would lead. She only knew that two strangers had stepped into her quiet night and changed it. And as she unlocked her door and stepped back into her apartment, the silence didn't feel quite as heavy anymore. The moment Emily realized her life was changing came quietly, almost without warning. Friday nights, once just another evening to survive, had become something she looked forward to. The small cafe with its warm lights and quiet music now felt like a place where the world made sense. Daniel and Lucas were no longer just strangers who had walked into her life, they were becoming the pulse of it. She didn't expect this. She didn't plan it. But sometimes life's surprises were too gentle and too real to ignore. That evening, Emily arrived at the cafe with a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. She scanned the room and saw them immediately, talking in low voices, leaning toward each other as if the rest of the world had melted away. She felt a flutter she hadn't felt in months. When they noticed her, their smiles were enough to warm the chill of the rainy night outside. Emily slid into the chair beside them. The conversation picked up as if they had never stopped. They talked about trivial things at first: favorite books, the best coffee spots in the city, the strange rhythms of Portland's rain. Daniel's calm, attentive presence made her feel safe. It's like someone was listening not just to her words, but to her silences too. Lucas had a different energy. He joked, teased, and drew laughter out of her in a way she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The combination was unexpected and intoxicating. A balance of comfort and spark that left Emily buzzing long after the conversation ended. Weeks passed, and Friday nights became ritual. Each meeting felt deeper than the last. Emily noticed the subtle ways they observed her. Small details that spoke volumes. The way Daniel remembered how she took her tea. The books she mentioned in passing, or the songs she hummed softly while waiting for her order. Lucas noticed the way her smile changed when she was genuinely amused, and the moments when she seemed lost in thought. Emily was noticing things too, the way Daniel's eyes held a quiet curiosity, or how Lucas's laughter seemed to make the air lighter. One evening, after the cafe closed, Daniel suggested a walk by the river. The night was crisp, and the city lights reflected off the water like tiny stars scattered across a dark canvas. Emily walked between them, feeling the warmth of their company, a sensation both comforting and thrilling. They talked about dreams, about hopes, and about the past without dwelling on regrets. The conversation was easy, but there were pauses, moments when words felt unnecessary. When the silence spoke for them, Emily had started to realize that what she felt wasn't just friendship. There was something deeper growing quietly inside her, something she hadn't admitted even to herself. She felt drawn to Daniel's gentle attentiveness and Lucas's warmth in ways that left her heart racing and her mind spinning. She hadn't expected to feel this again, hadn't allowed herself to hope for more than ordinary companionship. But here, under the soft glow of streetlights and reflected water, she felt the stirrings of something she couldn't ignore. It was Lucas who first noticed the shift in her. "You seem different tonight," he said, his voice soft, careful. "Happier, maybe?" Emily looked at him and realized he was right. She was lighter, freer, more herself than she had been in months. She wanted to tell them how much they had changed her life, how much she needed their presence. But the words seemed too vulnerable, too raw. Instead, she kept walking, feeling the warmth of the night and the comfort of their proximity. The river walk became a turning point. Emily started sharing more of herself, her fears, her doubts, her hopes for the future. Daniel and Lucas listened without judgment, their support steady and unwavering. They talked about love in quiet tones, about heartbreak and healing. about the ways people sometimes hide in plain sight until someone sees them. Emily realized that she had been hiding too, hiding from her own need for connection. And now, for the first time in months, she felt seen, truly seen. One night, the three of them sat on a bench by the river, the city skyline glowing in the distance. Emily's heart felt heavy with unspoken truths. She had to admit something, even if it scared her. "I was really lonely before I met you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't even realize how much." Daniel stopped, looking out at the water, while Lucas's hand brushed lightly against hers. "We know," Lucas said softly. "That's why we stayed." Emily's chest swelled with emotion. She had expected caution, maybe awkwardness, but instead there was understanding. Their presence, their patience, their quiet carrot all meant more than she could put into words. She realized that loneliness wasn't about being alone. It was about not being seen. No, she was being seen in ways she hadn't thought possible. Days and nights blurred together as their bond deepened. Emily found herself anticipating moments with them, feeling a mixture of excitement and vulnerability. She noticed how Daniel's calm presence could soothe her restless mind, and how Lucas's energy could make even mundane moments feel magical. Every laugh, every shared glance, every small touch of understanding tightened the threads that connected them. But with closeness came complexity. Emily found herself thinking about them when she wasn't around, wondering if they felt the same pull she did. She caught herself analyzing every look, every word, searching for signs. She wanted clarity, yet part of her feared the answer. What if it wasn't mutual? What if the magic of these moments faded under the weight of reality? Then came a quiet evening, one that tested everything. The three of them were walking through a park, the night air heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Daniel fell silent, thoughtful, while Lucas laughed at some joke Emily couldn't hear. She realized then that life had shifted. She wasn't lonely anymore, but she was vulnerable, standing on the edge of something new, something unknown. The bond they had built felt fragile yet unbreakable, delicate yet full of promise. Emily's mind raced as they reached a bench overlooking the city. She knew she needed to speak, to name what had been growing between them. "I don't know what this is," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. "But I know it matters. More than I expected." Daniel's eyes met hers, steady and calm. Lucas's smile was gentle, encouraging. No one rushed to fill the silence. They simply sat, letting the moments stretch, letting the unspoken understanding settle around them. Emily realized that love, connection, and trust didn't always need words. Sometimes it was enough to be present, to show up, to stay. In the days that followed, Emily embraced the uncertainty. She laughed more, walked taller, and allowed herself to hope again. Each Friday, each shared coffee, each river walk was a reminder that life could surprise her in ways she hadn't dared to dream. Daniel and Lucas weren't just companions, they were mirrors, reflecting back the parts of herself she had forgotten existed. Emily's heart was open now, tender but alive. She understood that love and connection were never simple, never guaranteed. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. Ready to explore the possibilities, ready to take the risk, ready to let the people who had stepped into her lonely world stay. And as the city lights shimmered on the river that night, Emily realized that stepping into connection was not about losing control. It was about finding herself again, through the care, laughter, and presence of two people who had arrived when she needed them most. For Emily, loneliness had ended, replaced by something far more powerful: hope, warmth, and the beginning of a story she never wanted to end.